welcome to the Quiltfolk virtual show and tell. My name is Jenni Smith and it's lovely to have you here. If you're anything like me, then you are probably missing your quilty friends at the moment. That feeling of sharing projects, stroking fabric, seeing what other people are doing and just hanging out with like-minded people. Travel is so difficult at the moment in the current circumstances, and yet there are people creating all around the world. When I started talking to each of the 4 guests in the show and tell today, I could feel a very real shift in my mood, because people and their stories and the way in which they tell them through the medium of fabric and thread never ever fails to inspire me. I really hope that by watching this you will feel the same too. So take a little bit of time out, grab a cup of tea or coffee, relax and enjoy it, and we'll catch up at the end to have a little chat and see what you think.
Hi, my name is Mique. I live in Harderwijk. That's a little harbor town in the middle of the Netherlands. This is my husband skating on the lake near my house. Quilting is not a part of Dutch culture at all. It's like imported. I don't know if there are any historical quilts in the Netherlands. I think the Dutch like to embroider and crochet and knit more because you need less material and still get a nice result, or something that's really useful. We really like useful things too. The first time I embroidered something, I was about 3 years old. I think I could do embroidery before I could write. The strain on my shoulders, on the muscles, was so big it pulled on the vertebrae in the neck, and they went out of position, so I really had to stop. And then I discovered the long arm machine and the free motion quilting on the domestic machine also. And well, it's embroidering with a machine. So it allows me, especially the long arm machine, it allows me to embroider again, but in a standing up position with my arms relaxed and the most wonderful thread colors. It's really fast, but yeah, well, it feels very satisfying. This quilt started as my first trial to design my own pattern. I hadn't been quilting that long. I think I've been quilting for about 4 years now. I started drawing on paper piecing paper for a part of it, and just making templates, and started cutting fabric and sewing it together. And it wasn't easy at all. The green and yellow fabric reminds me of curtains my mother had in her kitchen. Well, I'm from the late 60s, but she had them in the 50s already. So it's kind of nostalgic fabric, and it gives me a warm feeling. I'm a member of the Dutch Modern Quilt Guild. That's a quite small guild, a national guild. We have about 90 members, and there's regional groups that come together in small bees. It's my hobby, so I'm not in it for earning money or making it big, but I would like to see people be more enthusiastic about my products, at least, or products that other quilters make. My youngest son has named it Orbit because he was always into planets and space. And when he saw this, he said, it looks like they're all planets in orbit and circling around. So in the quilting, I did the free motion quilting and parts with rulers. In between the bigger circles, there are little planets interconnected, and like little space station thingies. So I tried to quilt it in the same sort of atmosphere. Working on this quilt brought back memories of things we went to see, or when we went to the planetarium. And yeah, well, that's a good thing about quilts. It's connecting memories to something that's really nice and cuddly when I'm quilting. And that's, I can just keep on doing it. It's giving me energy instead of costing me energy.
Hi, I'm Shashri and I'm in Sacramento. This quilt for me kind of has a deeper meaning because I don't usually name my quilts, but this one is called Voyage. And I think one thing that's really exciting about quilts is that we often make quilts for other people. And I'm often thinking about people that I've never met, people in history whose voices have been kind of lost to history. So this is really about my ancestors and their voyage across the ocean, being captured into slavery and then brought, into the Americas, and kind of thinking about that lost past. So for me, this one is, quite a bit deeper. And I really wanted to kind of dive deep into shape and, the circular movements of the ocean, and then, really deep, dark blues with contrasting colors is what I was really thinking about with this quilt. At a very young age, sitting in school and, we'd have festivals or things happening, and other classmates would talk about where they came from. And I was like, well, I don't really know where I came from, and really feel like our past has everything to do with who we are now as people. And it's just so important to kind of know what that is. And I think that making art really helps us find that on a deeper level. When I look at it, I feel grounded, if that makes sense. I think in my own way, when I'm making art, I'm kind of always looking for balance. And it's, really obviously a very personal sense of balance, but, just kind of the whites and blues here, how they connect to, the curvy whites and blues up here, and then this kind of contrast area here. To me, I want my eyes to kind of be drawn everywhere at once when I make a quilt, especially something like this. And I feel like with this piece in particular, I've really been able to achieve that. I didn't want, I wanted a little bit of print, but not too much print, and then just enough solid so that the indigo dyed fabric really pops out. And that's kind of what I was going for with this. I want it to be really intense, but then also somewhat calm at the same time. Thinking about my ancestors' journey, it was very up and down. It was good and it was bad at the same time. It was all of these different things and encompassed together. I think that quilting for me really is a deep extension of who I am in general. It's really infused in my daily life. And I think what got me so deep into quilting is that it was a medium that I could use and still connect deeply with my children. And, I can sit at the dining table and hand quilt and while the dishes are running or something's cooking on the stove. It's an art form that is a part of my everyday life. I'm just part of this continuum of things that's constantly moving forward. And so I'm just hoping that, in the future, my quilts are seen and that people are inspired and think about what they want to do with their work and what story they want to tell. And I really think that's what it's about. It's about sharing. It's about telling your story and then inspiring people to tell their story as well.
Next up is Sarah at Cornerstone Quilts, who's in Hatfield, not far from London in the south of England.
I have an autoimmune disease called Sjogren's, and I call it my Sjogren's quilt because you can tell that some of the stitch I was feeling quite rough, and some days were really good days for me and the stitching was good. Very much with the lockdown, you can see that some are quite angry stitches because I'm frustrated of being locked inside. So it's a nice documentation of how I've felt over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm really happy at the place I am at the moment with my quilting. I think leading up to where I am now, I was always trying to please other people. I've never been one to make a quilt just to get it into an exhibition or get it to be accepted at QuiltCon or anything like that. And I've never wanted to, I'm not a pattern follower, print off patterns and make them. I've always wanted to be sort of more individual, but then I haven't wanted to be an individual to make myself different. I think that's where the thing is. If you want to find your own voice, you've just got to let it come out when it's ready. I'm in my early 60s and I've been quilting for over 30 years. And it's only been the last 5 years that I've really felt confident in what I'm doing. Whereas my style hasn't changed, I don't think. It's evolved slightly. But when I look back at quilts that I made 20 years ago, I can still see my stamp on them. It's very hard not to sort of stand alone and be confident with what you make and do. I always work in linen normally, but this is dyed on sateen, so it's very fine. And my normal quilting thread, either a Shashiko or a thicker thread, thicker weight, it just looked really clumpy on it. So that's why I chose silk. I talked my quilts. I always have done. You know, it's I'm either talking my head if there's other people in the room, or I just not necessarily talk to the quilt as in how you're doing and whatever, but you know, I will go through lists in my mind of what I need to do as well. It just makes my hands not fidget, whereas I'm a terrible worrier of what I have to do next and what I have to do tomorrow, what I have to do next month. Whereas I find when I have a needle and thread in my hand, it just makes me take that time out and write a list calmly in my head. It's my way of troubleshooting problems. I'm not very good at problem solving when I'm away from fabric, if that makes sense. You know.
I heard about Ric's work when I came across issue 3 of Quiltfolk in Hawaii. The stories, the spirituality of Hawaiian quilting were just intriguing. It's like nothing else in the world. So it's a real pleasure to find out a little bit more about Ric and the quilt that he's working on at the moment.
I live in Ewa Beach, Hawaii, which is a western suburb of Honolulu, right in the middle of what used to be the sugar plantation cane fields. I had this in my mind for 13 years. It's a whole cloth hand applique. So all of the black on this fabric was cut out from one piece of fabric. Hawaiian quilt traditionally is never sat on and is never slept under. This quilt is a silver sword. On my second vacation to Hawaii in the spring of 1987, 4 months before I moved here, I took a 1-day-long hike through Haleakala crater on the island of Maui. In that crater is this, to me, the most amazing plant and flower in the entire earth, called silver sword. In Hawaiian, ahinahina. The spike goes up as a strong central element with these curls coming out of it. In Hawaiian, the center of the quilt, the center of our belly button is called our piko. Piko is the center of the earth. All creation in the Hawaiian mythology, all creation comes out of the piko. I never quilt for a deadline. I never quilt with the goal of finishing a quilt. A Hawaiian quilt, I've got to get up higher. A Hawaiian quilt comes from the heart. And I'm real funny about my quilts, my Hawaiian quilts, when I finish them, it's like I didn't have children, but these are my children. And when I'm done, off to college, go. I want to give them away. I don't want to, I'm Paul. I had you, I raised you, you're done, go live your life.
It's not the material object, and yet it's hard to reason that logically. You think, okay, but Ric spent 2.5 years on this quilt and he doesn't care what happens to it. It seems like, I don't know, seems crazy.
Well, I care what happens to it. You're always the papa of your child. So I care deeply what happens to it, but it's not we have a word in Hawaiian, kuleana, my concern, my care. It's not in my trust anymore. I care where it goes and what happens to it, but it's not my business anymore. Wherever the quilt I think this is probably a concept that is universal, more so in indigenous cultures, that everything in creation, in Hawaiian, we use the word mana. Mana is a spiritual life force, a spiritual power. Everything has mana.
And are you a patient person?
No, not at all. I am so, okay, let's do it. I want it done now. I am so just everything that I ever wanted to do in life. I want to get there and have it done now. That's my personality. Great question, Jenny, because exact, complete, total opposite. Hawaiian quilting has taught me patience. Quilting is meditation. Eyes awake, mind focused, or not. But yeah, eyes awake and active. But that turn of the thread, I've counted once, computed, taking a square inch and measuring my stitches through the applique and then the quilting. My quilts have approximately 400,000 stitches, each one by hand, each one an act of love, each one a meditation, each one a prayer with needle and thread.
Thank you everybody so much for sharing those stories. If you're anything like me, now in my head I'm planning some very exciting trips. I'm going to pop over to the Netherlands and see Mique's quilts, convince more people to join the Modern Quilt Guild and learn more about that heritage and embroidery. Then I'm going to whiz across to Sacramento and see Shashari, dye some indigo and explore that feeling of telling stories in quilts and that tension between fabric choices and quilting, and how actually telling a story through the stitches that you put into the quilt at the end. That's really, really interesting. Her ideas on colour and balance. And then with Sarah in the UK, I'd be sat stitching through that beautiful sateen, all those gorgeous blues, which I love so much, thinking a little bit more about how to develop a personal, individual style, how to take the time to home in on that, I think. And then once I'd figured that out, I guess I'd pop to see Ric in Hawaii and spend an incredible length of time on an amazing project. Meditating by the Hawaiian Sea. It all sounds very exciting. It's wonderful to hear these stories about what people are doing at the moment, how they're getting through these strange times, and how quilting is there for them and always making them wanting to create something new and different for the future. I'd love you to join in the conversation. What thoughts were provoked in you? What did you react to? What people were talking about? How do you feel about quilting at the moment? It would be really nice for you to comment and for you also to reach out to those makers themselves, find out more about their work and connect with them. Don't forget to subscribe to the Quiltfolk YouTube channel, and then you're not going to miss any of the updates about what we're doing. And thank you for stopping by.